These are unprecedented times, and the coronavirus had made us all work remotely. But my guest today has already been working remotely for 8 years in Zoho. This is Vanathi. I have with me Praval Singh, the head of marketing for Zoho.com. Welcome to Working Remotely, Praval.
Hey, Vanti. Thank you. Thanks for
Uh,
putting this together.
Thank you for coming. Praval, when I say remote working, the first thing that comes to my mind is somebody lounging on a beach, wearing a cool headphones and sort of breezily working under the sunset. But you have worked remotely for as long as I've known you in this company. So help us paint a real picture of the pros, the challenges, and probably the incredibly good things that come with working remotely, and also, if there is a change in mindset to begin this remote work side of things. So, your perspective on that.
Uh, a fancy beach, nice sunshine, all of that is true, except that you only see that on Instagram. Doesn't happen in real life. Interestingly, when I joined Zoho uh, almost 8 years ago, I was one of the few remote workers, uh, not the first. And initially, it was challenging to sort of navigate through the company, right? We were close to, I think, 1,200, 1,300 people back then. But it was hard to navigate because everybody else was pretty much in an office, right? And working with teams, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was hard, I would say, to begin with. And I had no prior experience of working remotely either. But over time, you figure it out. And in so many years of doing that, I've realized that you have to pick up a few things that you have to stick with, right? Routine being one of them. Uh, the idea of over communicating uh, when needed instead of
Mm-hmm.
assuming that people have figured it out. All of that helped. And then once you build a rapport with the team or
Mm-hmm.
teams,
Mm-hmm.
there on it becomes a lot easier, I would say.
Right.
Uh, and then 8 years ago, remote working wasn't that cool, probably. It was starting to get cool, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, my parents had a tough time believing that I would get paid for what I'm doing, right? And I had to set up boundaries that you cannot just assume that I'm at home, so I'm almost always available. But over time, we figured it out, and we realized that it's working out well. Uh, I'm able to balance things out, uh, not as much as I would like to. You know, there are times when you wake up, there is a email or a message, and there is some crisis, and you deal with that, and then by then you have like five other messages, and then you start dealing with them, and then you realize it's noon and you're yet to take shower, right? And yeah,
Absolutely agree.
so that's what
Yeah.
it is.
But now, when let's say if you're given a chance to work from an office setup to working remotely, which would you prefer?
I think an ideal environment is a hybrid of both. I still see the teams I work with definitely once every quarter, and there's no alternate to FaceTime, like in the sense real FaceTime.
Yeah.
Not just for getting work done, that still happens remotely, but in terms of building that rapport,
Connect.
huddling up on certain projects and getting that momentum, sort of real life interactions, in-person interactions,
Right.
meetups, all that
Yeah.
are very, very important, I would say. So
Right.
I don't think I would want to change what I have. In a
Mhm.
sense, I'm able to work remotely. That gives me several hours of undistracted time, right? Plus, I have the flexibility and freedom to see my teams several times a year. So yeah, it's the best of both worlds, I would say.
Beautiful. And interestingly, you touched upon aspects like building a connection, building a rapport, having that kind of emotional interaction with people also in a work environment. I think we cannot talk about remote working without talking about the technological advancements and the tools that come together to help us work remotely. And as I talk about that, we released Zoho Remotely recently with 11 tools that include a chat platform, a video conferencing tool, team management applications, product management project management applications, and remote support with augmented reality, and I could keep going on. So back when you started in 2012, I believe, how many of these tools were really there? And with the advancement of these tools, did remote working become easier?
That's a good question. When I look back, we did have certain collaboration platforms or tools. What we now call Zoho Connect existed in its early form with some other name. Zoho Click, our chat tool, was also there. I think it was called Zoho Chat back then. And these were my primary modes of communication aside from email, of course. I mean, as much as people think that email will go away, I don't think it will ever will. Email is the tool for remote workers. It's always been that way. Because and the beauty of emails is you can communicate with people without being available all the time, and then there is no fear of like missing out or what you call asynchronous communication, right? If I have an email, I don't have an urgency to reply to that right away. But if I have a chat message and I've seen it, there's a sense of urgency to reply to that. So between the email, the collaboration, what we call internal social network, Connect, what we have today, Zoho Connect, was an internal social network with some other name. I use that, Click and Mail. But over the years, I mean, last 8 years of me being here, a lot has changed in terms of not just newer products, but the products that we had back then have also matured a lot. Like today in Click, you could do a video call, you could do a group call. All of that wasn't possible back then. And beyond the tools that we have, I think the infrastructure as well has improved a lot, right? I'm speaking with you on a 300 megabit connection right now. 300, it wasn't possible back then, right? Or even if it was, it would be insanely expensive to sort of think of getting that at home. Right. So both technology and our sort of expectation with it has evolved over the years.
True. Thank you. And in the same breath that we talk about the use of technology, I'm also going to touch upon a company's cultural aspect that come into picture inevitably when we talk about remote working. And interestingly, in your social media channel, I think in your LinkedIn platform, you had posted this. I'm going to read that out now. If you cannot trust your teams to work from their home, no remote working tool will help you. It is not about tools. Perhaps it's not about tools at all. Trust is paramount. Tell us about that, Praval.
Yeah, I think it was just a reaction to the barrage of social media updates I've been seeing in the last couple of weeks. I mean, I know as a company, we went completely remote, all 8,000 employees 2 weeks ago. But this has been happening globally, right? So a lot of people have been putting updates and all of that. And a lot of people reached out to me, and I was seeing general updates as well about people asking which tool to use, to communicate effectively. What are you using to video calls? How are you chatting in real time? I think somewhere I realized that all of this is beyond just tools. I mean, as someone rightly said, technology is an enabler, right? Unless you're able to trust your colleagues and team members to be able to do their best, I don't think technology can solve for that, right? And also, I think in today's time of this global crisis that we are dealing with, expecting someone to go remote and be at their peak productivity levels right in the first week is just unfair, right? Absolutely. So for me, a lot hasn't changed in terms of how I work or operate on a day-to-day basis, but I'm seeing how my teams are almost struggling, especially in the first few days they were, to get things done. And I mean, just look at the fact that I saw a lot of messages coming over the weekend, right, which didn't really happen earlier. What's happening is people aren't really realizing the difference between a Thursday and a Saturday because it just seems the same, right? So people are getting used to it, and I think we have to trust them in these times. And all of this connects back to a larger thing of all the way back from how you hire people, with what kind of attitude and all of that. So it's not just about tools, is what my point was.
Definitely. And I completely empathize on giving people some time to getting adopted to this remote working system, because I myself, I just couldn't understand what was going on when they asked me to stay put in my house and not move around and walk around in the office, see a lot of people. And I think it definitely took a solid 1 week, even after having such robust applications that our company has. And even after having acquainted to these applications, a little bit of mindset change was definitely needed. That was beautiful points that you covered. And one more thing, one more social media post of yours. I think I'm seriously stalking you on social media, so bear with me. I'm going to read this post out loud too. Having worked remotely since 2012, I would just say that your mileage may vary. Figure out what works best for you. There handbook. I think you made this post as a reaction to a lot of advisory posts that keep coming up on social media as to this is the best way to work remotely, and try this, try that, do exercise, and all of those kind of things are going. Well, a lot of them are really good pointers. It is definitely true that you have to figure out what works for you. Also share with us over these years, what have you figured has worked out the best for you?
Well, you don't want too many days when you end up realizing at 2 o'clock that you're yet to shower, right? That used to happen a lot with me early on. So I'm way past that, thankfully. But yeah, I mean, that tweet that you're talking about was my reaction towards a ton of advisory that I was seeing. And a lot of it was good, to be honest. But my point was, it's easy for you to not to be able to follow all of that when you're just trying to feel like, for people who're not used to, let's say, cooking at home every day, and when they have to, I think that's more important than them figuring out where are they sitting to get work done, right?
Tell me about
I mean,
that.
that comes much later, right? I mean, I'm sure you can relate with that, right? Because even you, I've known you've not worked remotely before this.
Yeah, and I've
So
definitely not cooked too. So it
yeah,
is.
now I've done both, touch wood, and enjoy both. So, but expecting everybody to be the same is unfair.
Right.
I mean, I was joking with a colleague day before yesterday on a phone call that I've probably earned a lot more respect in the last 2 weeks than I did in the last 8 years, because a lot of people used to think, and not to their fault, but that you have it easy, man. You don't have to like go to work, right? Uh, what a
Sure
reason
that
to sort of experience that now when all of us are now working remotely. But just figure out what works for you. Some people say working while standing works for you. I mean, get a standing desk. I mean, but that's not something that is a prerequisite to start working from home. Some people hit the gym. Some people go for a walk. Some people take their dog out. Some people like to cook. Some people still prefer to order. Whatever, some people have kids. Some have their parents living with them. Everybody has their unique equation, right? So there can be guidelines and suggestions. I can give you half a dozen of them. But then, to be honest with you, I probably don't follow all of them every single day myself, right? Because it's pretty dynamic. You don't know. Like a couple of days ago, released a new program and for helping small businesses, and I could see teams globally, across different countries, collaborated in different time zones, and the focus was on pushing something live, right? People would have skipped their meals, would have skipped taking a walk that day, definitely, right? So there will be times when you have to do that, and it's part of the whole thing. And so that's what I want to say, that take it easy on you. If you've not done this before, it's not magic, but then it just change, and no change is easy.
Yeah,
so
I agree. With some patience and some discipline, I think we will all be able to figure out what's working best.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think working remotely or work from home, however we put it, is there to stay. I think Corona has just redefined the way we may have worked all these years.
I think we'll see a lot of hybrid styles of working, like I said.
Mm-hmm.
We will see teams set up remotely, let's say a small team of 4 or 5 people working in a remote region,
Mm-hmm.
them collaborating with each other, and then syncing back to the hub, like a typical hub and spoke model. I mean, if you look at Zoho, we ourselves have a typical hub and spoke model, right? We have people across different countries and continents, and then we have people, a lot of them back in India, and then we all work pretty much in a hub and spoke model. So, would you call people outside of India and some of the other countries where we have smaller teams, would you call them remote? Maybe yes.
Yes.
Remote work doesn't just mean work from home. Okay,
Right.
so it just means you're remote from your larger team, but you could
Definitely.
still be achieving, delivering, accomplishing certain projects, either in your individual capacity or as a small unit.
Yes, definitely.
So I think we'll see a lot of that now.
Definitely. And who best to say it other than you, who has pulled it off for 8 years in this company? So, Praval, tell us one weird location where you had to work remotely.
Uh,
Be honest,
where I had to work remotely. Okay, that's a good question.
a weird location.
And okay,
We know our mobiles go everywhere. And
yeah, I
all
mean, you don't want me to walk that path, but I remember, I was once at a hill station on a family vacation, and that was the only time I remember I really logged out of Zoho Click, our chat tool. I usually don't log out, like, I would be unavailable or idle or whatever.
Right.
I thought of logging out and taking that day off with the family. We had a get together planned. And that night at 11 p.m., I get a phone call by, and the person who called, she said, I didn't see you on Click, so I called you. I was like, you know what, today is the only day in the last 5 years when I logged out. So there was some crisis and the internet wasn't there, so I had trouble. But we managed, I remember that distinctly because that was probably the only time I really logged out of chat since then. And I think by then I had been at Zoho for 5 years. So this is 3 years ago. But yeah, I mean, I've worked at various remote places, at airports and flights and different offices and offices of our friends and all of that. I mean, I've done all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time, Praval. Thank you for joining us in Working Remotely. I think I'll catch up with you soon next time. Thank you again.
Thanks, Vanti, for having me, and thank you for putting this up together.